Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome back to A Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and the show tonight is a testament to the human spirit. Too many times you say or you hear or you read, well, that's genetic. There's nothing you can do about it. Oh, that's just the way it is. It's never going to change. But you know, tonight's show is an unbelievable example of the truth about human beings and mankind and humanity, and how much, when the right action is done, how things flip 360 degrees and take off into the stars, into the galaxy. So I'm sure you're probably curious about what this show tonight is about. So let's get started with it. And Buddha, if you put up the pictures of our special guest tonight, Mr. Amir Ali El Bey. There you go. Founder of the Guerreros de Luz, the Warriors of the Light of Brazil. I'm tingling just giving you the words. Wow. Very spiritual group. He was born on Long Island and moved to Brooklyn, New York, where he was raised. In that harsh environment, Amir got involved with Brooklyn gangs. Because like any other youth, you want to fit in. You want to be accepted. To better survive, his father instilled martial arts as part of his life mantra. Mr. El Bey's martial arts skill and reputation quickly spread throughout the city as he became a gang enforcer. In high school, he organized his own martial arts crew, unfortunately incurring several warnings and having the risk of being expelled from his school. In a last-ditch effort to salvage and help Amir, his basketball coach introduced him to Jalan Vieira, who taught him Capoeira, Brazilian martial arts. Capoeira turned out to be the game changer. With a new purpose, he graduated in the top 5% of his class. Amazing turnaround. And after 2 years of Brazilian martial arts training, Amir was invited to participate in a Capoeira tournament, which forever transformed his life. Coming to Brazil brought him a higher reality compared to the harsh Brooklyn reality of poverty and rampant homelessness. The amount of homeless children on the streets of New York City was upwards of 40,000. Amir felt the need to pay forward what he had received, and so founded the Guerreros de la Luz, World Peace Initiative. Since then, Mr. El Bey has worked with and taught about 200 children from all different walks of life in Brazil and all around the world. His mission is to be a positive influence and hope that people duplicate and copy him and expand on the program. Mr. El Bey believes that everyone has the same responsibility to help someone in this world, and he leads by example. He now resides in Brazil doing his work. And there you see him on the screen in the blue. I call him the James Bond for good. So Buddha, let's bring Mr. Amir Ali El Bey up on the screen and welcome to Time for Truth, Amir.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me. I really, really appreciate this, actually.
Hey, it's going to be my pleasure. It's going to be a live James Bond movie. I mean, like, what else can a guy want?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you know what?
It's funny.
Well,
It's funny just hearing you say that. When I think back at just how I grew up and where I am now, it's just, like you said, it's a 360-degree change.
I tell you, you got an amazing story, absolutely. So let me give you some questions because I want to share your story with the world. So tell our viewers about your early years in Brooklyn and what your life was like back then.
Okay. Well, I grew up in the projects. I grew up in Red Hook projects. So anybody who's not familiar with the projects in Brazil, the projects in Brooklyn, they're generally rough neighborhoods, low income housing. So, a lot of poverty, a lot of drugs. And when I grew up, the time that I was growing up, it was like either you were a drug addict or you were a drug dealer. And I knew I didn't want to be on drugs. And I also knew that I didn't want to be a drug dealer. So I was like, I did the next best thing. I took my skills, which were martial arts, since I had been training with my father for, basically my entire life. And I used that to, make my way in. So I ended up being that kid that really knew how to fight. And all the drug dealers wanted him around because if anything went wrong, I was there to take care of the problem. So I ended up being, the enforcer, the bodyguard, the intimidator. And yeah, that was it. That was how I got, I made it through my life in the projects. And like you said, eventually the reputation gets out there. I had one day when I had 10 fights and I won 10 fights in one day. It was like, some kind of crazy martial arts street tournament. And then that just kind of spread throughout all of Brooklyn, and that was probably like the day that my real fame started.
Amazing. You know what's interesting is really what you did was honorable and logical because you didn't want to hurt people by putting them on drugs. And you realized that definitely you didn't want to be on drugs because you knew that you were going to get messed up.
Yeah.
So actually, you know what? I gotta actually give you this in case people say, well, what are you talking about, Dr. Fialkov? He was in a gang. Yeah, but like what choices did you have, right?
Yeah. It's like I made up a choice that was kind of it wasn't the obvious choice. It wasn't something that was offered. I kind of figured out my own way to not be on either side, but to use what I have to make it through, basically.
Very interesting. I want to ask you, so what was it like to be in the gang? Like give some reality to the viewers because they hear about them, or obviously nobody wants to be constructed by a gang of guys, but what was it like to be in a gang?
Well, it was very interesting. A lot of people will think like gang and, you guys are always fighting or, robbing people or selling drugs or whatever you do. And it was funny because, yeah, we did that. We also had some like pimps in our gang and everything. But for the most part, we were still just kids. We were young teenagers, young adults. I started, being involved in the gang when I was about 12, 13. And then I was real deep in the gang when I was about 15, 16. And it's funny because, you know, during the day, we would actually be watching cartoons and playing video games. You know, so we were just kids, and, you know, we had to figure out how to survive in our environment with the tools and what was presented to us. So, you know, we were kids, and all we were doing is just trying to make it, you know. A lot of us didn't, actually.
You know, it makes sense what you just said. You were just trying to figure out how to survive with the tools that were available to you back in that area, in that neighborhood. Makes a lot of sense to me. Makes a heck of a lot of sense.
Yeah, and without, I mean, I got lucky because even though I was in the street, I did have a lot of positive influences. You know, there was a after-school program called Cam Friendships that was in my neighborhood, and I was linked to them. I would play basketball with them, so they had a little bit of positive influence on me. Not enough to keep me out of the gang, but enough to, you know, give me some kind of guidance while I was in there. You know, and there are a lot of people who don't have these positive influences, and they're the ones that really get caught up, because what happens in society is a lot of people will be like, oh, these kids are in the gang, you know, just write them off automatically. You know, nobody's gonna deal with them. They're marginalized, and nobody even tries or reaches out to them. And really, they're just kids. You know, they're just kids, and kids all over the world are just kids. They just need somebody to show them even a little bit of love and a little bit of attention, and it literally can change somebody's life completely.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I was reading the other day that sometimes when you're missing that love, or when you're missing, like what you said, that somebody acknowledges you, that it's okay, you know, you're a kid or you're a teenager, so that you know that, you know, you're accepted, that sometimes when you don't have that, you're kind of like forced to prove that you're that. As you start doing, like you said, you do things to try and get approval, to show that you really are what somebody could have just acknowledged and loved you for, and then you get relaxed.
You do it because you want attention. You know, you want somebody to show you some love and attention, and when nobody shows it to you, you act out, because a lot of times that's actually how you end up getting that attention. You know, it's
you
not
know, you're so right.
you don't know another way.
Yeah, they have that saying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So then, you know, all this is going on, and then you get this, did I say this right? Capoeira, is that right?
Capoeira.
Capoeira, okay. So that comes into your life, and what happens then?
Okay, the story about like what happened with Capoeira, it was like one of those things, you know. And when I was a kid, you know, people would talk about like spirit and signs and signals, and before that, I didn't believe in it. But it was it was a 2-week period. So 1 week, we had a big fight in the school, in the auditorium. It was about 30 of us. It was a huge fight, big mess. You know, and I got suspended, and they were like, we're going to expel you. And then the next week, this guy, Jalon Vera, shows up, who's from Salvador, where I live, with Capoeira, and my gym teacher and my basketball coach were like, well, hey, you know, we have a proposal for you. It's an ultimatum, basically. It's like, whenever you're not in class or in basketball practice or in, you know, lunch, you have to train Capoeira, or you can leave, you know, drop out of school, you kick you out, you get expelled, and, you know, the streets will do what they want with you. And that was on a Monday when they gave me that proposal. On Wednesday was when this video game Tekken 2 came out, or Tekken 3, that had this character Eddie Gordo, who actually was a capoeirista. He played capoeira in the video game. So it was a fighting video game with this guy who did capoeira. That was the Wednesday of that same week. And then on a Friday, my brother came to me with a cassette tape with a movie called Only the Strong, which is a movie about capoeira. It was like those 3 hits in the same week, and I was like, well, okay, if I don't believe in signs, if I didn't believe in signs then, I don't have a choice but to believe now. So I was like, okay, I guess I got to go for it.
It's pretty spiritual, you know. It's wow. It's amazing that the 3 things happen. And you know what? I want to do something on the show. I want to acknowledge your gym teacher and your basketball coach, that they had the intelligence to realize that you had this ability. And what they had to do, instead of like restricting you and labeling you, right, and getting rid of you, instead they let you use your ability in a positive way.
Yeah. Oh, they saved my life, man. They really did. Not only that, they saved my life, and they saved a lot of other people's lives. You know, really. You know, had I continued down that path where I was, you know, I was good at what I did, I would have definitely ended up hurting a lot of people.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's something I'll relate a story one time. In my neighborhood when I grew up, I really didn't like violence, but I got fed up one day. And so I said, all right, you know what? I'm going to be the bully. So I never forget this. And I took this guy down. His name was Mikey. And I had him in a headlock on the ground. But then when we were on the ground, I go, what am I going to do now? I said, I didn't want to start hitting the guy. So I let the guy go because I realized that it made no sense to me. What was I going to prove? And I didn't want to hurt the guy.
Yeah, what's next? Yeah.
Right? So, right, exactly. So then I tell you what I did. And you'll probably start laughing. I let him go. And when I let him go, he wanted to fight with me again. He wanted to fight with me again. And I said, this is insane. This is like a no-win proposition. I hurt the guy. I don't feel good. I let the guy go. He tries to make me look like I'm, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
Amazing. Amazing. Let me ask you a question. Probably nobody's ever asked you this. In some altercations that you had, have you ever had a time where you knew that you'd really hurt someone if you fought with them, so you just try to get the guy out of there and leave?
Oh, yeah. Yes, that did happen to me. And it's funny because this happened in junior high school, and the guy actually, up until that point, was my friend. You know, and his girlfriend was also my friend. And there was a night where, I don't know what the situation was, but we all ended up leaving school late. And my friend, who was his girlfriend at the time, she lived in a pretty bad part of the neighborhood. And it was late, so she asked me to walk her home. And I was like, sure, I'm not going to let one of my friends, you know, walk by themselves, you know, home in a dangerous neighborhood. And, you know, during this time, I used to wear gold. So I had a couple of gold rings, and I was like, well, you know, just in case, hold my rings for me. You know, just in case something happens, you know, you have my rings, put them in your pocket. And we don't draw attention to ourselves by having gold on. So I gave her my rings, and I walked her home. She got home safe, and I walked back home to my house, and everything was cool. So the next day, my friend comes up to me, and he's yelling at me. He's like, oh, you trying to take my girl? You this and this and that. I'm like, no, it's not like that. She's my friend. I've known her for a long time. You know, I've known her, and I just walked her home, and that was it. Like, nothing happened. I didn't try to do anything. You know, I'm not like that. Just not like my thing. You know, and you're my friend too. Like, why would I do that? So he's like, and he's getting all mad and riled up, and all his friends around him, who aren't actually my friends, are like, yeah, get him. So he starts to swing at me, and he's swinging at me, and I'm like, look, man, I don't want to fight you, and I'm just kind of dodging his blows and blocking him, you know, very easy. And I'm like, no, you don't want to do what you're trying to do. Please stop. I'm like, no, please stop. Don't, you know, I don't want to fight you. I didn't do anything. Nothing happened. It's okay. So then, you know, he starts trying to grab me, and he grabbed me by my legs, and he throws me on the floor. Then he jumps on top of me, and he's trying to hit me in the back of my head, and I'm just moving my head so he can't actually hit me. And then, you know, I got kind of fed up. So I did a push up to get up, and as I got up, I grabbed him by his legs, and I was like, okay, I can slam him right now on his back, but I don't really want to fight him. I don't really want to hurt him. So I let him go. The minute I let him go, he throws a haymaker and catches me right in my jaw. And at that moment, it was like, okay, you know, all the gloves off, and I swung and I hit him, and I literally hit him so hard that I cut his face open from here to here. And then he realized what was going to happen if I continued, and he was like, no, I don't want to fight anymore. I'm sorry. And I was like, now? Okay. And I just let it go.
Well, you know what? It's great that control, and it makes a lot of sense, because in the long run, you know, you got to feel good with yourself and have your own code. So that I give you a lot of credit, you know, to have had the awareness to do that. So let me ask you a question, because this probably comes up with when you're teaching your kids. When you have your guerreros of luz, what concepts and principles do you teach the pupils that you're instructing?
Well, I basically teach them the universal laws and principles within the martial arts. You know, like the law of divine oneness that says that everything and everybody is all, you know, part of the same oneness, you know, made from the same molecules and you know, same four elements. Everything is part of the same thing. The law of action, you know, in order to get to your goals, your actions must match what your goal is. You know, so you got to do something that's towards your goal at all times. The law of vibration, you know, you attract what you vibrate, and you vibrate what you are, not even what you think, but what you are, and you attract that. The law of attraction, which is one of the most popular laws. The law of gender, the law of polarity, you know, I teach them all those things. And then some philosophy that I learned in the martial arts, you know, just, you know, trying to maintain peace and balance. I'm also teaching them meditation, how to control themselves and control their emotions in certain situations. And, you know, see the forest for the trees, as opposed to being, you know, in the moment and stuck in the process and, you know, get caught up in things. So, you know, those processes I teach. You know, without a religious basis, you know, it's called Guerreros da Luz, but there's no like religious context behind it, because I don't want to alienate anybody. So, you know, that's what I teach them.
That's a beautiful philosophy. And like, what makes capoeira different from other karate? Like, how is it in philosophy that you know, it differs?
Okay. Well, in philosophy, it's pretty much the same as karate, where, you know, you don't want to be the perpetrator of violence. It's a completely defensive martial art. But what makes it unique is that it looks like a dance. You know, it's done to music. When it's in full fledged, you've got people clapping. You've got an orchestra of instruments. You've got people singing. So it almost becomes a mantra, and it's a community orientated martial art. So you can't have a capoeira. You can't be a capoeirista, somebody who plays capoeira, without a community to play capoeira with. So it gives you access to people who you wouldn't normally have access to. In that like, it broadens your horizons, because in my capoeira class when I first started, and even now in my capoeira school when I go back, there are people who are from the Philippines, there are people who are from Jamaica, there are people from Hawaii, the Europeans, Asians, there are Africans, Americans, there are rich people, poor people, men, women, there's some people with disabilities, there's some elderly, you know, so you get to mix with all these people, and each person has a different story, comes from a different walk of life. So all those people get together and they share what they have, and that's what capoeira is. It's that community, and in the rhythm of it, it becomes internalized. So you're behavior becomes different. You know, you have this confidence. You know, it's like you're always dancing through life, and it helps you become. It gives you a lightness and a lightheartedness that transcends from the martial art into your life, and that's why capoeira. That's what makes capoeira unique, and that's why I chose capoeira as opposed to, you know, taekwondo or jiu-jitsu. Even though I do teach jiu-jitsu and karate along with the capoeira, because that's those are the things that I mainly focused on in my life. But capoeira is the base because of that, the expression, the self-expression, the confidence, the self-awareness, the awareness of your surroundings, and then the connection to the earth that you have, you know.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful philosophy. I really like it, and I can see why you chose it. We only have about a half a minute left. So, you know, you have done such a turnaround in your life, and now you're helping other people. What would you like to state for those viewers watching the show that you feel is important for them to take into their life? And there's someone in the background talking. If you could get them not to talk back there.
Okay.
Okay, good. So go ahead. What would you like to give as a concluding remark to the viewers out there from you?
Okay. First thing is, meditation is a social responsibility. If you are over the age of 5 and you're not meditating, you are doing a social injustice to the rest of the world. Secondly, everybody should reach out to help somebody else. That's the only way that the world is going to elevate. That's the only way that we're going to evolve as a human species, as a human race, because the only race that there is the human race. Everything else is just ethnicity. So if you're not reaching out, paying forward, helping somebody around you in your community, you might as well be dropping bombs on them.
You know what? It's been my pleasure to have you on the show, and I'm glad that you're teaching these future leaders and all these people really the way you're teaching them and making them aware. And I agree with you that we got to start helping each other. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And for those of you out there, if you want to find him, he's Guerrero of Luz. And you have a email or website?
Yes. You can send me an email at gdlpeace, gdlpeace @gmail.com, or you can go to the website. It's www.gdluz, Guerreros da Luz, gdluz.webs.com. It's a free website, so that's why it's .webs.com. So www.gdluz.webs.com, and on Instagram, Guerreros da Luz World Peace. You can find us there.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Have a good night.
And for those of you watching, check it out. Let's do what Amir has told us. Actually, his name, Amir, means in Spanish to love. So let's go out there, help each other. Let's evolve as humanity. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode of A Time for Truth show.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet